Okay. Now we've clean started. See, I started twice because I didn't like the first start. That's how we do things on Funny Book Forensics. We let you know the insides and outsides, and all what's in between. In between?
The cabbage.
Inside.
In the spaghetti. What? There's no spaghetti and cabbage. I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's like we're layered. No, I was going to go we're like layered, like cabbage or Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts. Those are layered. I bought Brussels sprouts the other day because they're delicious.
I'm sure that's what every listener wanted to know, is that you bought Brussels sprouts.
I bought them so I could cook them in the new air fryer. I mean, like, I know you're excited about that. The listeners are. Got my grandma a new air fryer, and that's like, she wanted to cook sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, and the white broccoli, which is cauliflower.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. See, it's like a Christmas meal.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about Christmas with the superheroes.
Whoa!
What? I said I would go find something from the archive, and boy, did I.
You did. You delivered, Dan, just like Santa.
I don't know. I mean, by the time we're done reviewing this, I don't know if everybody will agree that I delivered here, but I definitely pulled out a tabloid that I have called Limited Collector's Edition Presents by DC Comics. It's number C-43, if anybody's curious. That's Collector-43. Now, these tabloids came in a couple of different names. So this one is Limited Collector's Edition. There were a couple of different names they would throw on top of the tabloids. But the tabloids this is not one of the more famous ones. This is not Muhammad Ali fighting Superman.
No. But, I mean, a giant cast of characters in this book. And
we do
your normal, like, collected stories together.
Yeah, it seems like an odd set, right? But it is with a lot of collector's edition, they would pull together older stories. One of the more famous one was like the Flash Superman tabloid, right? The Race, which came from an issue but got republished into the tabloid, and it was a huge deal. Some of them were not collector's editions, is that they had actually original stories. Like there are two big Legion of Superheroes ones that I have that were original stories. In fact, one was super famous because Mike Grell left. We've mentioned this on the podcast before. Not Mike Grell, sorry. I said Mike Grell. Dave Cockrum left DC Comics because they wouldn't give him his interior splash art from the book. And then he went on to draw some characters, X something.
Oh, some X characters?
Yeah.
Like X-Force?
Sure. No, I don't insult Dave Cockrum. Like, okay, look, I actually like Rob Liefeld. I think he's a really nice dude. But let's not compare Rob Liefeld art to Dave Cockrum art. Ever.
Okay, ever.
At least from costume design standpoint, because that was Dave Cockrum's thing, was designing those wacky ass 70s costumes and yeah. Though Liefeld, and you know what, I do. You know, did we not just discuss this? I feel like I was just discussing Rob Liefeld's feet with somebody. Was that last week on the podcast?
No, it was not last week on the podcast. Okay. But we have discussed it before where, I mean, there's definitely a time frame in which there was no feet, and then there were some form of foot, and then there became feet.
You know who I was just discussing it with, actually?
Huh? Who?
I was just discussing it with your co-author.
With
co-podcaster, Travis Webb.
Oh, Travis Webb. Travis, yeah. I was like, Tanner? No, not Tanner.
That's who we were. That's who I was talking to about.
That's right.
Our consensus was that every time we've interacted with the guy, he's really nice. That doesn't mean he can draw feet, but it does mean he's really nice. We do get a little bit of a bait and switch with the cover of this issue.
Oh, yeah.
Because we get it's a Kurt Swan cover. Like, who doesn't want one of those?
Yeah, you see this and you're like, wow, this is great. This is, I mean, it looks jolly and cool, and you got great display of character and stuff like that.
It's like a Norman Rockwell background with Superman flying a sleigh, with Sandman and Sandy the Golden Boy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's Abel, because Abel is House of Mystery, right? And Cain is House of Secrets, right?
Yeah.
You're digging into your brain there.
I'm digging into my brain. I read a lot of them, I believe. Yes.
And there's Wonder Woman and Batman. And no offense to Kurt Swan, but we're going to get a much better looking Batman inside.
Yeah.
And of course, we get Santa Claus. And it's interesting because as we go through these with Kurt Swan, you get a much better Superman on the cover than you do inside. But there's reasons for that, which we'll discuss in a minute. Get a much better Batman inside. I actually think I like the old school Wonder Woman better than the cover Wonder Woman.
Oh.
But I don't know where you're at. I mean, Sandy and Sandman are drawn by Jack Kirby inside. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And Abel looks good. Abel looks a little bit too friendly, I think.
He does. He looks so happy. Well, I mean, he's with Santa Claus. Of course he's going to look friendly. I mean, he's happy. I mean, he's not trying to, give you a sad story or, scare the crap out of you.
Well, yeah, except Abel usually was trying to scare the crap out of you because he's sort of like the crypt keeper for the House of Mystery, which they couldn't have a crypt keeper because of the comics code. So after EC and they moved some folks over to DC, you get that different kind of
storyteller.
Yeah. Well, no, art. I think. Yeah. Because didn't they bring in, and I'm looking at the back, it was so Joe Orlando came over, right, to do that stuff for DC, to edit the line, and he had less freedom than he did in the past.
Yeah, can't have that scary detail face.
Well, we've got a lot of issues, so we are not going to go line by line through every single story, though we will for a couple of them. Probably the Sandy and Sandman story.
Question for you, and just so listeners listening, because and for my own knowledge as well, like these collector's editions, as we're discussing this, these are a much larger comic, correct?
Oh yeah, and I think I said tabloid size. So if you're not familiar, tabloid size is it's like literally think of Life magazine size. So if you're looking for boards, sometimes you have to look for like the Life magazine size tabloid. It's much bigger. I could go get out the tape measure, but yeah, I think aren't they 11 by 14?
I believe so. They're large.
They're big. When I was holding mine that I actually own, which maybe if I record Greg opening Christmas presents and throw it up on YouTube for everyone, I'll bring this book so you can actually see how big it is. But they're big. They're big issues. I bought a few years ago. I have multiple copies of a couple, so occasionally I'll try to sell them, but they are hard to ship because you have to get them wrapped up. And sometimes the post office is argumentative about whether or not they're books or not, because by definition, a comic book, you can't ship book rate, but you should be able to ship them book rate if they're from 1976 because the advertisements inside of them are no longer valid.
Yeah,
because it's not classified as a book. It's classified as a magazine if it has advertisements. It's not. But so there's some debate among whether or not older stuff should be. So it makes it really interesting to try to figure out how to ship these, I guess, is the what of it. But yeah, I mean, this is really cool. This was put out in 1976. With a February-March cover date, which is really interesting because that means that with the February-March cover date, they almost have a disadvantage because this definitely would have come out in 1975 at Christmas time. So you go back on the cover date. So that's when these are weird too to me, like where it would come out in November or December, right? So it's really weird, with that weird publishing thing where the cover date's always ahead of the book, but in this case, you'd think you'd want the publishing date to actually be December.
You would think
you wouldn't. Yeah. Well, the whole point of putting the future cover date on is so it could stay on the newsstand and people would think that they're buying something that's new, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, I don't think you'd usually buy a Christmas issue in February.
No. But I mean, I guess for their the newsstand, whatever, however they do their weird bookkeeping, I guess.
Well, and we're also in 1976, so we're a couple years before the DC implosion. So Carmen Infantino is still the publisher, and of course the DC implosion leads to major shakeups in the business, and we see a lot less of these tabloids after that shakeup. So they're kind of a unique thing of their time. DC's come back with some tabloids in recent years, and also some oversized books that aren't quite tabloid size. So have been kind of the thing for the last couple of years, in sort of, because they don't have the Vertigo line anymore, but they have. I'm trying blanking on the line, but those books were a bigger than a comic book size, but not tabloid size. And you will see some tabloid size books from time to time. I have a couple of Justice League books that they did tabloid size that were really neat. I have an entire tabloid size history of DC Comics written by Paul Levitz that is amazing. It's like a coffee table book, except it's like 4 or 5 inches thick. And you cannot hold it. You have to put it on the ground. They actually came out with some that were smaller, that covered each era that he covered in the book, right? But it's a little bit more manageable. So they've done some fun things with tabloids here and there. Do you have any big tabloid experiences? Mine were getting those 2 Legion books, right? And then kind of discovering other tabloid books after that.
I don't have, I have a couple, but they weren't something I collected just because they were too big to fit in boxes of stuff. And the ones that, like, I had a couple of G.I. Joe ones that were tabloid size that, and maybe a Transformer one, but everything was, they just got messed up over time, dog-eared, and, you know. Yeah.
Well, that'd be interesting too. We could maybe go back and look, because the Marvel had the oversized books too, and they maybe were still doing some tabloids in the 80s. I don't remember a lot of DC tabloids in the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, this is cool. It's neat. We get a huge cross section of the stories here. We get a book from 1940, another one we had 2 from 1940, right? 2 stories from 1940. We get another one from like 1970, another one from the late 60s, and then another one back from like 42. So this is an interesting cross section of stuff they sort of throw together. And it's interesting to me. This is a unique way, I guess, to repackage. And this is one of the sort of controversies from the 70s too, right? As you were starting to get artist and creator rights advocated for. Here we are in 75. Right around the time Neal Adams is getting that stuff together. And here we are repackaging old stories and probably not paying people for them and throwing them in a book. And Neal Adams is one of the artists in the book.
And he's like, "Where's my paycheck for my story?"
And I doubt he got one. So it's interesting, too, if you go in your publishing back matter, too, for your catalog from the 1940s. So I think the first thing that you get is a Superman on the cover that is definitely not the Superman you see in the story. So there is massive progress with the Superman character from 1940 to 1975. And it's really interesting. We'll get to it when we go through what the editing team is working on in the back. But Superman is in a very different place than he was here. But here there are some similarities that stuck with the Superman mythos over time, and this is kind of a fun way to look back at some of it. Though I'll say our first story, which is, let me make a click here. It's Superman. It came from Superman Christmas Adventure Volume 1 in 1940. It was done by Jerry Siegel writing, so the original Superman writer, but not Joe Shuster. By this point already, Jack Burnley had replaced Joe Shuster on the book. And Jack Burnley was the first major artist to draw Superman after Joe Shuster. So we're fully into National Comics at the time, right? Eliminating Joe Shuster from the work. And people don't realize it was that early on.
Wow. I'm like, progress?
Yeah, so Superman comes out in 38, right? So we're already off to another artist.
Wow.
So we've got Superman flying on the first page, and we've got Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And we'll do a little synopsis of this one. There's some stuff I want to point out in the book, and I'm sure you saw too. But basically, we get the first few pages, and we get Superman and Lois Lane are basically doing Toys for Tots.
Yeah.
And we meet a little boy who's throwing toys on the ground and breaking them and telling people he wants a motorboat or a yacht.
Because he's not happy with his toys.
Well, and it's good here that we see little Jeff Bezos right here wanting his yacht. It's very important.
Yeah. He's not pleased with the things that he has.
So he needs more. But unlike Jeff Bezos, this person didn't create a multi-billion-dollar company. He just wants his parents to buy him a yacht. So
yeah, I mean,
a little bit different. A little bit different than a small loan to start the company.
I was going to say, didn't they though? Didn't they?
Well, that's up for debate.
Technicalities.
Probably so.
Couldn't he just want a rocket?
That's fair. Well, the little boy gets kidnapped by Superman.
Yeah. Superman just like busts in, steals a kid. I'll give you a yacht. I mean, no.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
No, he takes little so and so. I don't remember his name already. Little James. Yeah, there we go. James. He takes little James flying around the city and shows him sad children that don't have the things he has.
Yeah.
And
why are you taking it's like a very like a child Ebenezer Scrooge story, it's like, I'm going to show you all these. Why are you taking me to this tenement apartment? Why is she playing with a broken doll? Because he's like, I really never realized.
Yeah, he's become woke now. He's never realized how much other people had. It's okay. It's sort of weird that his reward for being a brat was to get to fly around the city with Superman.
Yeah, it's that's Superman's like holding him all gingerly and nice and stuff like that. He should have just like held him by his foot.
Well, the good news is we move the story along and we meet some people that flew to the North Pole on a spaceship.
Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. So they're known as Dr. Grouch and his crony Mr. Meanie. So obviously a lot of thought went into the names of these characters. And they come to Superman's secret North Pole hideout where he's making toys, and they try to attack Superman, and the elves kick their ass, and they leave.
Santa Claus.
Sorry, Santa Claus, not Superman. Yes, I said Superman. He's the I was thinking. I was just trying to move through this book. Yeah. So,
but the elves have like zapper guns and stuff like that, and blast on them. It's pretty good.
Well, they made them, so it's good. And then we transition. Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meanie get a lot of places conveniently in this book. I have no idea how they get there, but they just show up.
They fly around in their spaceship, getting places, and they got gas guns, and they gas Clark.
Yeah, I just don't know why they have a spaceship or anything. But yeah, I mean, they take out Clark and Lois and try to light the Toys for Tots area on fire. I guess maybe they have something in their spaceship that lets them know every place somebody's trying to make toys for kids, and they just go and take it out. But we do learn that they want to basically turn the North Pole into an industrial factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they don't really want it to be there. So, while Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meanie, they decide after capturing Lois Lane and tying her to a rocket, that they're going to go after Santa Claus again.
They're going to shoot her into space.
Yeah, and as they go, they're going to shoot her into space as they go. The panels are sort of weird on page 8. Well, anyway, they capture Lois Lane, who she tries to go after them, right? Because as Lois Lane does, and gets captured because damsel in distress.
Right.
The early Superman was such a mind fuck because you have Lois Lane, who as a character, right, is odd for the times. I guess even though it's during World War II, you do have more women working in factories in different places, but you have a female reporter for a major newspaper, which is kind of groundbreaking for a kid to read about in comics, right? You're role breaking, but obviously, if obviously Superman mythos, she's constantly the damsel in distress in the stories too. So it's always sort of a weird dynamic.
Well, she's groundbreaking, but also getting herself into trouble because she's pushing the boundaries, right? So
because she's just a girl reporter.
Of course, it's how she was written, but yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, and again, we talk about too, sort of evaluating these for when they were written in their time, right? So it is sort of groundbreaking for their time, but they continuously do go back to the same trope over and over again.
They do it like 3 times in this story. They keep putting her in the same. It's like, seriously, she's like, she gets gassed, she gets put on a rocket by these guys, Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meanie, and then they they just keep putting her into bad situations, and she keeps either getting out of them, or Superman saves her over and over.
Usually Superman saves her.
Yeah.
And we do have the classic S on Superman too. We don't have the modern stylized S yet, so
No. Yeah.
we're on the classic. By the time it is no Kryptonian armor symbol or family symbol or something, that's long before any of that's created. So he rescues her, and then somehow she gets in trouble again, like you said. But now, and then we find out that Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meany, the elves, have discovered that they've kidnapped all of the reindeer.
Yeah, kidnapped the reindeer.
I don't know where this truck came from. Weren't they in a spaceship? Like, how did they get a truck to the North
What's
Pole?
crazy is that they can be in Metropolis and keep going back and forth. They're super fast, right? So they're moving lightning speed. They're capturing Lois. Then they're stealing the reindeer from Santa, where they're just moving at a lightning speed, faster than Superman, apparently.
Well, Superman rescues the reindeer, but doesn't disable Mr. Meany, and he shoots the reindeer with knockout gas. So now there's no one to fly the sleigh. That's how unfortunate. I couldn't have predicted this was going to happen in the story, but any guesses on who's going to fly the sleigh?
Is it going to be? It's going to be Mr. Meany?
Yeah. So
No?
I don't honestly know. We're in 1940. I assume we're at the. Well, yeah, we're at the radio show point, so it's up and away, right? So it's not just jumping Superman now. It is full on up and away with the flying noises in the background on the radio show. So
yeah,
he's flying the sleigh around. He doesn't. Now soon we're gonna learn why he doesn't take out Mr. Meany and Dr. Grouch, because Dr. Grouch and Mr. Meany are gonna learn the true meaning of Christmas, because just nobody ever gave them a present as a little boy.
Oh my gosh. And
when they got presents from Santa Claus, their hearts turned, and now they're happy and they love Christmas.
They got Grinched. Their hearts grew 3 sizes that day.
And we find out the little James and his servants, because that's how they're referred to in the story, are going to go deliver presents to other little needy kids.
Mm-hmm.
And Superman says, I hope all you readers will remember to be generous to those less fortunate than yourselves. And now, Merry Christmas to you and a Happy New Year. The end.
All right.
So Superman wasn't out there to start. And you know what? I was going to start on it. I'm done with that story. You know what? Because I turned the page, because this actually happened when I was reading. And I see Neal Adams' art, and I'm like, okay.
Oh,
yeah, I've forgotten the first story already. It's gone.
It's gone. Neal Adams' art. Here we go. Let's do it.
And yeah.
The Silent Night of Batman.
We get Frank Robbins is the writer, so it's not a Denny O'Neil work. It's a backup story. Frank Robbins, I didn't know much about, but he did a lot of Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane.
Okay.
And some Superboy and some detective comics. I don't think he did a lot of Superboy and the Legion, because I don't know much about this guy at all. So those things didn't cross. And he did a little Batman and detective as well. It says his contribution to Batman is notable for returning the character to his dark theme, a part of departure of the Silver Age camp style.
That would explain how this story is so dark for a Christmas story.
Yeah, and so they do put him together with, it's not even that dark, but yeah.
What are you talking about? It's the darkest Silent Night of Batman I've ever read.
Right, he's, okay, it does acknowledge he was working with Denny O'Neil and Julius Schwartz, the editor at the time, to make that change. So, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. It also says he did some work for Marvel in the 70s on Captain America and Ghost Rider. Which sort of makes sense if he's helping with the Switch.
I love that show. Ghost Rider. So good.
It's not. What do you. No. Stop. No.
Imagine being a kid in the 90s and being like, I like Ghost Rider, Mom, and then getting a Ghost Rider shirt because you keep trying to come home and watch Ghost Rider, and then your mom gets you a Flaming Skull shirt, and you have to wear it for because you got it for Christmas. And
did this happen to you?
No, not to me, but I read about it.
Okay. Well, we are off to the Batman story, The Silent Night.
Yeah.
And
Of the Batman.
Commissioner Gordon calls Batman.
Oh.
Wait, you know what? First off, we have Batman looking down at this amazing city scene and cityscape that Neal Adams drew.
Yeah. All these people out shopping.
And we have all these like really cool faces and realistic faces because like Neal Adams drew them all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good panel.
The art, yeah. Before we get into the story, the art really, it's a podcast. So you can't see the art, right? But, go pull this up on the DC app or did I say what issue it was? It's Batman. This is in this, but it was originally in Batman 219. If you want to go look it up. And yeah, the art is just amazing. Okay, so in the story, simple story. It's just an 8-pager. Commissioner Gordon calls Batman with the bat signal, and Batman's like, "Why? It's like Christmas Eve." And they're like, "No, you're going to sing Christmas carols with us." So all of Gotham's finest and Batman sing Christmas carols. And we see what happens in the city. One little boy steals a package from a lady, opens it up, and there's a Batman toy in there, and he wraps it back up because it's Batman, because he's sad, and he gives it back to the woman. And I learned something, by the way. And so they were singing Jingle Bells for that, and then they start singing We Three Kings of Orient, and either they're wrong or I are.
Mm-hmm. You are?
I are what I are, and I am what I am. I've always thought it was bearing gifts we travel afar, and it says bearing gifts we traverse afar. And in the back, when they give me the lyrics, it says traverse afar. So I learned something today about We Three Kings.
Maybe they had to change the lyrics for copyright infringement.
I don't know. Maybe so. But they listed the authors in the back.
They said this was the DC lyrics for.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway. We get a man with a gun, and he's about to do something bad. We're not really exactly sure what, because he stumbles into a guy that looks like Batman. He gets scared for a minute. Then he finds out it's the Support Wayne Foundation Christmas Drive for the Blind. And he looks at his gun, and he feels sad, and he throws it away. Yeah.
And then this book is in 1970, so you'll know the time frame is the Vietnam War. And we get a woman, and she's sad because she doesn't think her soldier boyfriend / husband, we don't know, is coming home. She goes to a bridge, and it looks like she's going to jump off. But right before she's going to jump off the bridge, the soldier jumps out of a truck, sees her there, and hugs her, and he's back. So she's okay. I'm not sure what that one had to do with Batman making the city better, but...
I mean, if Batman was there, he might have stopped her.
Yeah. Well, and then we get to Silent Night, Holy Night, all is bright, and then Batman realizes it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's actually fallen asleep because he sees like a shadow of Commissioner Gordon. He punches up in the air as he wakes up. So now we know what Batman does when he wakes up in the morning. He punches into the sky. Yeah. My eyes are playing tricks on me. Yeah. And then Commissioner Gordon says, "We've been waiting here all night, and not a single call has come in for you. It appears the investment you've put into the city is paid off tonight, giving you a night off." And Batman's like, "Investment, spirit, Batman, spirit of Batman, Christmas spirit." And he says the end. Though I will say, like, imagine if it was like a Nolan verse Batman singing Christmas carols.
Yeah.
Now, how would that go?
I'm Batman.
Silent night. Holy night, all is calm, all is bright.
I'm Batman. and then, he would he'd probably punch a bunch of people instead of punching into the air. And then he's like, "Have a silent night on Batman."
The interesting part is it says Frank Robbins was the writer here. And I was wrong because I was looking at the wrong thing on the page. It wasn't Frank Robbins. I look up all that stuff on Frank Robbins, and it was Mike Friedrich who wrote it.
Oh, okay. Well. So
there we go. So I gave you all that stuff on Robbins or the wrong author, as Friedrich wrote it.
Here on Funny Book Forensics, we give you the details that you deserve.
The wrong details that you didn't deserve. But Friedrich's done all sorts of things, so there we go.
There you go.
And you got a little bit of history of Frank Robbins, so okay, way to go, Dan.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Friedrich's like 30 years younger than Frank Robbins.
It's true.
And is still writing stuff now, but Hey, that's good. I just feel obligated to share that Friedrich did some Justice League and some Flash and a bunch of shit at Marvel. So, a bunch.
A bunch.
Okay. Well, there we go. Dan messing up the podcast already.
It's all
you know
right.
what? That seems like a perfect time to move to our House of Mystery story.
Yeah, when I flipped the page and I saw House of Mystery, I was, because I didn't even read what was in the book. I just like flipped the page and I was like, what? Yeah. This is great.
Well, what does this book have in common with the last book?
Nothing at all.
Story.
Well, I mean, it's Christmas themed.
Well, you wouldn't know it. Neal Adams drew the cover for this book in 1971, okay. But we don't have the cover. We just have the story on the interior.
Well,
it's another backup story. Len Wein wrote it. You've probably heard of that guy.
Heard of that guy.
Did he work with Dave Cockrum on something important for the X-Men?
I believe so. Yeah.
Or some character that starts with a wolf.
The wolf. The wolf of Havel of.
Sure. So this comes from House of Mystery, Volume 1, number 191.
Yeah.
And
Kane kind of looks like a Wolverine.
He does, actually. Yeah. And we get Kane and Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, of course.
And this one's drawn by Bill Drott, who, again, this is where I need experts next to me to tell me what's happening. But I don't know anything about this guy at all. I thought the art was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty neat. Apparently, he retired in the early 80s from comics, so he wasn't around too long in comics. But, yeah.
Probably been doing comics for a long time before that, or telling stories a long time before that.
Well, Kane has a story, or not Kane, sorry, Abel. God, we just talked about this, Dan.
No, this is Kane. This is Kane.
Oh, this is Kane. So Kane is House of Mystery, and Abel is House of Secrets, right?
Secrets, yeah.
Yeah, so they had the two houses. Okay, so I had it backwards before. Well, it doesn't matter. I can't figure out who Cain and Abel are. I know who they are in the Bible, I guess, but not here. But House of Mystery.
House of Mystery.
We get a story, and basically we get a story of the night prowler, and we have two parents watching television together, and we get this line, which this is the line of the book, of course, that, brings it back to reality. And they're watching the news, and the husband says, wars in the Middle East, racial strife at home, and murders, mugging, and strikes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this book was written in 2023.
Yeah. I just watched the news with my grandma, and it feels like that's pretty on par.
And the guy says something you could never say in a comic book now. There are times I'd wish they just dropped the bomb and end it all.
Yeah,
Jeez.
No. Yeah, that's
Okay, friend. A little rough.
Is this Archie Bunker?
You want me to see if it had a stamp on the book?
No, probably. I don't know if it did or not. But
well, anyway.
Oh man, Bernie Wrightson did the art on this.
Yeah,
wow, that's great.
No. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes, Bernie Wrightson.
Yes, he did. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
You want to tell us about Bernie Wrightson?
Amazing artist. Just like if you look at anything horror related, he is like. I have a bunch of Bernie Wrightson trading cards because they're just great to look at. They're fantastic. He drew a lot of these House of Mystery books and House of Secrets and stuff like that, but just a lot of horror.
He drew Spectre and Showcase for DC.
Yeah.
But what is he probably most known for? To a common comic books fan, not a horror fan.
Oh, that's that Swamp Thing book.
The Swamp Thing, yeah. He created Swamp Thing with Len Wein.
Yeah. That Swamp Thing book. That little book. So if you're familiar with that, then you're familiar with Bernie Wrightson. But yeah, his horror stuff is freaking mind melting.
And this was just a couple page backup story in House of Mystery. We've got the couple goes upstairs. By the way, the shadowing in this art is really cool. You never really see the guy's eyes until the end of the story. You see them at the beginning of the story, and then it's at night. when the supposed horror piece is happening, right? You don't see his eyes. But the couple hears something downstairs. He's like, I'm going to grab my shotgun and blow their head off. And he goes downstairs and he looks, his eyes are reopened. His eyes are closed and then they're reopened when he's like, I'll be a son of a gun. And he comes back upstairs and his wife is like, Fred, have you gone crazy? And he's like, no, at least I don't think so. I just have the feeling that there may be hope for us yet. So it's pretty obviously he's seen Santa Claus downstairs delivering presents and he doesn't shoot him and he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
It says Merry Christmas. So now all is right in the world because, sure. And it says at the end, quiet hoofbeats rose from the roof carrying the sound of jingle bells out over the city towards the coming dawn. And it does say towards, not toward. So it's not me saying the word wrong.
Towards.
It should be toward, right? That's bad editing, right?
Towards. Not towards.
Sure.
Towards.
Well, we get a splash page with no Legion of Superheroes in it.
Greetings from the superheroes. Christmas greetings.
Yeah. And I always love these, so this should give you 1975. This is what they're advertising at the time. I thought it was actually interesting. The Legion is not here at all, and neither is the Justice League. Here's what they're promoting right now: Batman and Robin, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Golden Age Green Lantern and Flash. So we're getting that rebirth of the Golden Age there. We get their Fawcett Comics folks. So we get Captain Marvel Jr. and Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel all on this. So they had gone hard in trying to use the property they won in a lawsuit in it was like late 1940s. Or was it early 50s? Well, anyway, I forget when the Fawcett Comics lawsuit ended. This is like early 50, right? It wasn't like 1951. But anyway, somebody else can look it up and tell me I'm wrong. But they're trying to get those properties. Of course, you had the Shazam ISIS Power Hour on TV. And Shazam cartoons, believe it or not, would last at least up to 81. Because I just looked up for a book I'm writing, the cartoon lineup in 1981. And there was still a Shazam cartoon on in 81, which I didn't know. What I learned, by the way, and let me finish the page. I'll tell you what I learned by looking stuff up. Wonder Woman is on here and Superboy. So they're really promoting the heck out of Batman, Superman, the Marvel family, and the Golden Age heroes. That was interesting, just what they're choosing. By the way, I discovered why. Just side note, we mentioned Thundar the Barbarian when we were doing the Jack Kirby stuff. Yeah. Do you know why I didn't watch Thundar?
Why?
Because it was on at the same time as Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, that would make sense. You're like, okay, I can only watch one of these things, and I'm going to choose this.
Yeah, so as a 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I was watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends instead of Thundar. And yeah, so that explains, if you were listening to our last podcast, not the last one, but the one before, you know why little Danny Shabbat wasn't watching Thundar, even though it looked cool, because I was watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So there we go. Now we get a Wonder Woman issue by Charles Moulton. Of course, we know that is now Charles Moulton Marston. And if you want a crazy history of the beginning of Wonder Woman, the crazy history, you can watch Moulton and his Wonder Women. Kind of biographical pick about their family, and it's fascinating. I won't get too far into that right now. And we also get art by Harry G. Peter, and this comes from Sensation Comics, Volume 1, number 14 in 1943. So we are well in the middle of World War I?
Two.
Or two? Yeah, geez, Dan.
It's cool.
I just became a DC movie editorial where we're just going to move Wonder Woman into World War I for her movie instead of talking about World War II, because, I mean, why would we do that? Like, why would we? Well, anyway, so we get this is probably the writing in this is so much more advanced than the Superman story.
Yeah, it is.
And if you know a little bit about Moulton Marston, he was trying to use the books to teach kids and tell a story at the same time. He's a psychologist, right? Right. So you're going to find a whole. It's almost like when you read this, it's almost like you're on a spy hunt for the tidbits he's trying to teach kids. Mm-hmm. So number one, he starts out by naming something he names the It's like the phylum. I don't know. What are all the names of plants?
Oh yeah, no, he names the tree. He tells you the names of the trees and stuff like that. He gives you the animals and stuff.
But he gives you the Albes balsamia so you know it's a fir balsam, right? So you know what those are called scientifically. Yeah. Slides that in there. Maybe I definitely needed these as a kid, clearly, because I don't even know what I'm talking about when it comes to biology, right? So I clearly needed these things dropped for me as a kid. And we get the story of how this fir tree meets Wonder Woman at Christmas time. And so Steve Trevor, I assume, and Diana are scouting out, and she's in her Diana Prince costume, and she's going to go scout one area, and he's going to go scout another area for Nazis, because we got to get those Nazis out of America, because they're everywhere.
I don't think they're in America, though.
Oh, they are in America.
Are they in America?
Yep.
Okay.
He said that village is Greenville, right next to the Canadian border.
Oh, okay.
Yes, on the other side of the mountain is Mill Junction. Escaped German prisoners from Canada are being smuggled from Greenville across the mountain to the junction. See, I read this thing.
Oh, see, I skipped over. Like, I must have skipped that over, and I'm thinking they're in Germany the whole time.
No, they are dead. They're in the United States, because that's where all the Nazis are hanging out.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting because if you know, I take a little bit of issue with this, even though historically I understand why it's here. But William Moulton Marston was always standing on the fact that he was trying to write these books to help educate kids. But that seems like a thing that could go really wrong, educating people, like making them really uber paranoid for things that don't exist.
Right.
But they also, for whatever reason, couldn't always have Wonder Woman in Germany fighting Nazis. So I don't know. It's just a weird. It's weird. Then he teaches you how to do decoding.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And we find out that Wonder Woman has to go to some cave named K3. And she's being flirted with by the tree, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The tree finds her quite attractive. In fact, the line is, I thought Diana was a dull-looking girl, but she changed her clothes, and suddenly I realized she was beautiful. So when women are oppressed by the clothing that makes them cover themselves up, they are ugly and dull. But when they get down to a bathing suit and a unbreakable rope, they're beautiful.
I guess.
I mean, this is right in line with his philosophy of the world. So
yeah, interesting character. He is. He was.
Well, the next little bits of the story are more interesting because we get like spousal abuse.
It's the whole like it whirlwinds. It's like it happened. Like all that happens so fast. It's like, what is going on? Like it's not necessarily spousal abuse, but it's like it's like this dude he walks in on his wife being like manhandled by some dude, and instead of actually like finding out what's going on, he's like, no, I'm done with you. I'm packing up the kids and we're leaving. And it's like after you beat up the dude and then you're just like, I'm not gonna even talk to you to find out your side of what's going on. Like,
yeah,
dude, it's like it's just like
and kids lost in the woods because they ran away from their dad who did all this.
Yeah, it's a domestic situation. It's definitely a domestic situation of some sort, but it's like it's a dude that just doesn't like he's like obviously like doesn't want to. He's not dealing with any of the situation, any of what's going on in his house very well.
I also find it to be a really uncomfortable trope. Right. I mean, you go from the 19-teens where we have movies where black men are trying to rape white women and mobs go after them. And now we have a German man speaking German trying to rape a white woman. And the husband walks in and thinks they're together instead of her being in distress. Mm-hmm. It's just really it's not good in any time period.
Yeah, it's just like, OK.
Birth of a Nation, by the way, is the movie I'm referring to if folks don't know what I'm talking about. But the Ku Klux Klan was always trying to paint black men as going after and trying to rape white women. And it's like we've just lifted and shifted, right? We've just literally lifted and shifted that to these Germans because now they're the villain, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's awkward and uncomfortable in any time. I don't like this at all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you got the kids that run away from their dad, and then they're like lost in the woods. Then they meet these people that are like, "Oh, hey, we'll help you."
Yeah. And then and they're Germans too, of course. So they demand they kidnap the little boy and take the little girl, and they go to the house to steal food, and then they capture the dad, and then Wonder Woman comes back on skis because it's snowing outside.
Oh yeah, there's snow on the ground.
I mean, it makes sense. Wonder Woman's a fantastic skier too, and she doesn't even need poles.
Yeah.
That's what I haven't quite figured out, like how she does her cross-country skiing.
Oh, I mean, she's agile and quick.
But you usually have to like propel yourself with something, right? Like
she's good at not using poles.
Well, we then get another one where it's the same German guy has recaptured Mom and is binding her. And if you want to get more into this binding stuff, I'm not going to get into it here. Just watch that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of binding.
Then we get into this again, super awkward part. I know people, it's interesting because you watch the movie and then I go back and read one of these issues and I'm like, I don't see this as a feminist thing, like a feminist triumph. I see it as just a guy trying to like get off on something. But Wonder Woman propels everybody over to go after the bad guys, and then she has Jeb, who is the father, tie her to a tree with her lasso.
She ties up Jeb, and then Jeb ties her up.
Yes, she ties up Jeb and flings him across.
Yeah, there's a lot of binding. There's a lot of tying up in this book. I mean, right now I've seen 3 people get tied up at one point now.
And then they say, I know Wonder Woman's bonds were tight, for I too could feel them. At last, her endurance was rewarded. So that's the tree talking, because she's tied to her friend, the tree, who was stretching out his branch. It's there. I don't know.
Their branches.
The tree.
It's true. Their branches.
To embrace her earlier. And then she tells the Nazi that comes to get her, I was bound by a man I trusted. Like, she's indicating she's helpless because she was bound by a man she trusted.
Yeah. And then
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
It's part of her ploy to get him to take her back to wherever they're hiding out, right? So he's like, "Oh, I'll take you back." And then he, instead of like freeing her, just keeps her tied up, and Duck walks her back to the cave.
Yes.
In a very awkward, like, with a rope around her neck, and she's still tied up, and it's, they end up back in the cave, and she's paraded around a bunch of Nazis saluting and stuff like that, which is, I mean, awkward again.
and then for some reason they untie her off panel.
Yeah.
And bind her to a door, I guess. Yeah. And she just breaks it and rescues the little boy and breaks everybody out of the cave. And I don't know what happened to the Nazis. They just left, right? I guess they say the cave is a trap because they abandon it.
It explodes.
Yeah, I don't know. And then she busts everybody out, causes an avalanche by rolling a giant rock that was covering the cave. Now, you could say the stone was rolled away.
Yeah.
From the cave.
The cave, yeah.
Even though this is a Christmas issue, but yeah. A little more iconography going on. Yeah. And then I can't imagine this is fun for our listeners. Hopefully it is. I usually, like, I'm either outraged or happy. I am just kind of baffled by this. Like, I don't know what's going on.
It's a weird story.
Well,
and then she fights a tree.
Well, she didn't fight the tree. No, that's her friend. She's rescuing the tree.
Rescues the tree. Oh yeah.
But
she
all of a sudden,
the tree from an avalanche.
Yeah, and we get a glimpse. They'd sent for Steve, Trevor, and Etta Candy and her girls, and they're just all running away from the avalanche. That's the whole. We see them in one panel.
Yeah.
And then she grabs the tree, and apparently the tree tells a nice story about how it was put in the yard of the family that all gets back together because she forgives her husband after being captured by Nazis for a year and just goes back. And then they're all friends. And Wonder Woman says, I hope I remembered everything the children want. Playing Miss Santa Claus is the most fun of all. She brings everybody presents.
It's a story.
Yeah.
Christmas story.
I was a little...
Hey, a Merry Christmas was had by all. The end.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we get a Santa Scrambled Super List, and again by Bob Rozakis, who's an editor at DC, right? And we get a little bit of who they're promoting too, because Abel, Adam Strange, Aqualad, Aquaman, so Teen Titans show up. Adam, Batman, Black Canary, Brainiac, Kane, Captain Marvel Jr., Clark Kent, Claw the Unconquered?
Claw the Unconquered. I got a Pooh Rock.
Commissioner Gordon. You got a what?
Pooh Rock.
Pooh Rock? Yeah.
If you read across the bottom, you got second row from the bottom, you got Black Canary and a Pooh Rock.
I don't think you're supposed to look for... I think that's for Sergeant Rock.
No, but you got a Pooh Rock. Do you see Pooh Rock?
Yeah, the interesting thing, too, is they say it's Sergeant SGT period Rock, right? But they put Sergeant... You don't have to look for the Sergeant part, but why didn't they just put SGT? That way it wouldn't be Black Canary Pooh Rock. It would just be Black Canary Sergeant Rock.
Yeah, but you don't get Sergeant Rock there. You just got Pooh Rock. I just find it funny. It's a Pooh Rock. Anyway,
I got a Pooh Rock. We get some interesting, again, no Legion references, which makes me sad. We do get a Morgan Edge reference, which is funny because the Superman stories are so different than the 1970s. They go to work for Morgan Edge and are on TV instead of working for Perry White. That's a little weird. Okay. And we get some DC staff members even get their names in here. So Denny O'Neil is in the crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
But you know who's not? Paul Evans is in the crossword puzzle. But you know who's not in the crossword puzzle for sure?
Who?
Neal Adams is definitely not in the crossword puzzle.
Joe Kubert is.
Joe Orlando is.
Uh-huh.
There's two, but one is Orlando and one is Joe.
Uh-huh.
Well.
Yes.
Should we get away from that Wonder Woman story?
Yeah, let's go do that. Let's see what the Sandman has for us.
Well, the Sandman has a lot for us. If you go back to the day we recorded this, which I won't tell you, you can see I posted something on the Funny Book Forensics Facebook page about what I make Greg read.
Oh, yeah.
And it was this. Yeah. And it was this. Who would ever suspect Santa Claus of being a tool of the ruthless underworld? Who would ever dream that the merry, kindly old bewhiskered gent would be connected with cunning, conniving crooks? Apparently nobody. That is nobody except the nocturnal nemesis of crime, Sandman, who rides the dark night, along with his gallant companion, Sandy the Golden Boy, to rout out evil and injustice. But it takes some fast thinking and faster action before the Phantom Pair can set things right for a merry Yuletide.
I'm sorry.
By Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. I don't know. Yeah. Uh-huh. And that's the entry page for this. And by the way, this is Sandman in Santa Fronts for the Mob, which originally appeared in Adventure Comics Volume 1, number 82, January of 1943. And this was written by Jack Kirby, penciled by Jack Kirby, and inked by Joe Simon, even though it's credited as Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, interestingly enough. And got it lettered by Howard Ferguson and editor Jack Schiff. So this is from the infamous early run, second run of Sandman. So you had the first run of Sandman in the Golden Age, where he has the big filter mask on. Jack Kirby and Joe Simon are asked by DC to reinvent them, and they basically make him into Batman with a sidekick.
Wait a minute. Batman already has a sidekick.
Yeah, well, now Sandman has a sidekick too, Sandy the Golden Boy. And they do a lot with
Sandman, Rise of Dark Knight.
Yeah. And they do a lot with these characters later. Wesley Dodds, obviously the Sandman, was brought back into DC proper by Neil Gaiman, right? In that, but not brought back. I mean, they brought Wesley Dodds back several times. Also super famous for his role in Kingdom Come as the storyteller, right, in the hospital bed. That's interacting with the narrator. So really cool stuff. Sandy the Golden Boy later becomes Sand and eventually Sandman as well. He becomes part of the Jeff Johns Justice Society in the 2000s. So they do use the characters again. One theme that these characters have when they're not in the Joe Simon and Jack Kirby piece is they can see things in their dreams. And so kind of that dreaming power piece. Yeah. And sometimes it can manifest itself in different ways depending on who the writer is. And so these characters have been used pretty well. This one was great for me. I'd never gone back and read one of these Sandman books. But this was always very controversial. Jack Kirby, or Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, came over to DC and they were on this book for a while. And then they got in a fight with DC editorial and they left. And Jack Kirby was basically banned from DC for this until they rehired him in the 70s after his run with Marvel. So, yeah, it's kind of a fascinating, these are fascinating pieces. I think this, and then it's interesting because the first thing we get is a guy dreaming, which is kind of like what the Sandman would do. So, anyway, we find out that this tycoon, his name is F.P. Miller. He's a department store tycoon. And he ate lobster, and apparently that doesn't do good for him because he has these bad dreams. And these bad dreams manifest as somebody exposing that his Santa Claus is phony. And then everybody thinks all the things at his store are phony. And then he wakes up and he's like, I got to find a perfect Santa Claus. Yeah. So, all right. But now we start to get to the cool stuff.
Yeah. The mob. What?
Yeah. So, hey there. I can't do mob voices.
Hey. So you want
a mob voice either?
Ew, so we're looking for the best Santa.
You're doing
I know, I'm just doing macho.
Just mobster. I don't know what's happening right now.
Macho is a mobster.
I guess.
Macho mobster.
I'm going for like he's used wise guys, and you're doing much
wise guys. Boss, I got a terrific idea. We're going to
get
Santa Claus into the business, huh? Santa Claus, you crazy.
Well, and basically the idea is them to go find some rube to be Santa Claus, and then and have him be Santa Claus, and they'll steal from the department store. So, or the people that buy from there. So the mobsters go out and they meet Mountain Man Beard, who is a wrestler. And we found out this is an analog for a wrestler named Man Mountain Dean, who actually was from New York originally. Mm-hmm. And apparently he went on to do some crazy stuff. Like he was a stuntman and all sorts of things. But he apparently went on to do a bunch of stuff for the Army that was just declassified in like 2021. Yeah. There's a great article by one of the senior editors at Sports Illustrated, John Wertheim. And Greg and I both read this afternoon. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's fascinating.
It is wild.
And but this was not known. So he had apparently done an amazing job because Joe Simon and Jack Kirby write this guy as just a complete buffoon pro wrestler who doesn't know anything and is dumb. And one of his original gimmicks was something like, wasn't it like the Hell's Kitchen Hillbilly?
Yeah, the Hell's Kitchen Hillbilly, where he's just like this hillbilly from Hell's Kitchen.
And when you link it back, Suicide Slum in the Kirby Simon world is Hell's Kitchen in New York. So, yeah, I thought this was maybe the side story might have been cooler than the main story. But
It's so crazy. I mean, some of the stuff we read about, and like again, not get into it, but I mean, he was Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
I want a movie about this guy. Well, and
yeah.
I didn't know watching wrestling, I guess. I just got on. I was like, this guy has to be real. So I did some quick research. They had other Man Mountains when we were kids watching wrestling, like Man Mountain Rock, the guy with the guitar. Like,
Yeah.
So they were always trying to reuse this Man Mountain gimmick, right?
The big,
But
big,
Jack Kirby and I did just take Man Mountain Dean. They turn it into Mountain Man Beard. And let me tell you, this guy looks just like in the comic. Looks just like the guy in real life did.
you do it side by side, and the picture, when I'm looking at the article and the picture that pops up is like, what the heck? This is the guy. This is Santa. I mean, this is the guy, the jobber that they bring in.
And then they take some stabs at pro wrestling because, first off, the link to pro wrestling in the mob in New York, not a surprising link to bring up in a comic book as a side thing. New York was well known for wrestlers sort of taking the fall, so to speak, at the time they would still bet on wrestling and things like that. By 1943, it had pretty much been exposed, but as fraudulent, and wouldn't take off again really until you had the Dumont network in the 50s, right? Doing Gorgeous George and showing wrestling again. So you have this kind of lull period. Also in the Great Depression, people didn't have as much money to go in the 30s to like go to wrestling matches, right? So you weren't necessarily getting as big a crowd. But by the 40s, we're in the war boom and you need entertainment. But anyway, we've got the Man Mountain got Mountain Man Beard, and he does some wrestling holds to himself in the ring, and is like, isn't this artistical? But they want him to play Santa, so
Santa Claus.
We move on, and we get in there. We get two familiar figures in front of Miller's store, and we get the Sandman and Sandy out of costume, and the Sandman, West Odds, recognizes something that is amiss, and so they leave and they follow Santa around, and they find out that it is indeed Mountain Man Beard. Yeah, and there they go, and we find out that the mob is publishing all sorts of nice things about Miller's department store. Hey, how I just want to point out on page 6 how terrible it is that they're using Xmas instead of Christmas. They're destroying Christmas.
They're destroying Christmas. Their paper wasn't it wasn't large enough to put Christmas on there.
Well, that destroys Christmas. I don't understand. We as children know that the 1980s were the first time that people started putting Xmas on things, and that's where our churches in the 1980s were all telling us that Xmas was destroying. We got to get the X out of Christmas. Remember, that was a big campaign.
Oh my gosh, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it just shows how ignorant we were then. Okay, so.
I thought it was just because we were Generation X and they didn't want us to celebrate it.
Yeah, that was it. Well,
it's our holiday.
We find out that the mob is using this we knew this already, but they go to rob the little boy Pete, who was promised some presents. And you know what? I think I was wrong. I don't think the other story did call them servants, by the way. I think it's this story. Okay. So I just got the stories mixed up. It's my bad. But he says he sent the servants upstairs because Santa Claus is here. And so James didn't call them servants. Pete did. My bad.
Pete did.
Yeah. It's Pete's fault.
Pete.
And Sandy and Sandman come in. Sandy, the golden boy, and Sandman come in and temporarily take out the bad guys. But they recover, and one hits Sandman with a baseball bat, and the other one hits Sandy with a baseball. And Sandman's down, and Sandy's like, ow, because he got hit with a baseball, which doesn't really take you down most of the time. So
it hurts.
The mobster's like, now I'll take poisonal charge of you, Sandman. I can't. Are we close? It was poisonal.
Poisonal.
I don't know. But anyway, now Mountain Man Beard is full. He was never with the gangsters to begin with, so he attacks them, takes them out. And Sandy the Golden Boy and Mountain Man Beard rescue Sandman, who seems fairly incompetent in the story. And that brings us to our ending. We arrest all the bad guys, and Mountain Man gets to work off his problems with the police by playing Santa Claus for the rest of Christmas, and everybody's happy at the end.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay!
See, the Kings of Orient. Now, I thought it was called We Three Kings, so maybe that's the difference.
Maybe, yeah.
So maybe this John H. Hopkins Jr. Licensed Kings of Orient, and it was We Three Kings, and he changed it from travel to traverse.
Yeah, maybe he changed.
Bearing gifts we traverse afar. Bearing gifts we travel afar. Bearing gifts we traverse afar. I mean, I think travel works better there. I don't know.
Yeah. No, maybe he just changed the lyric. He wrote a different song slightly.
Well, the comic gives us Superman, the Justice League, Batman, and the Marvel family singing different Christmas carols with the words. We get a maze, and then we get season's greetings from DC editors.
Oh, yes.
Julius Schwartz, the big boss of Superman. He is also the Justice League grouper man. From these Flash and Batman come the best wishes. Murray Boltinoff edits Legion, Brave and the Bold, and Falls in his region from World's Finest and Ghosts. Okay, so he does those. Joe Orlando does Eve, Cain, and Abel, and House of Mystery, and all that stuff. We got Joe Kubert is owning Sergeant Rock, no shock there, and Tarzan. Jerry Conway is in charge of Plastic Man, Black Hawk, and Black Condor and the All-Stars. Well, the implosion's going to hurt Jerry Conway. He's going to be back to writing. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, back to writing the Legion. Denny O'Neil is editing Kung Fu Fighter, but also doing a bunch of writing. And E. Nelson Bridwell, well, he's E. Nelson Bridwell. Let's just... I already almost said Julie Schwartz nicely, so we'll just leave E. Nelson Bridwell out of it. But yeah, we're a couple years from the implosion, so there'll be obviously a big shakeup when that happens. Yeah. In DC leadership. But yeah, I don't know. It was a collection.
Yeah, it was a lot of stories. There was some really, really fun reads. There was the difficult one. I would recommend. After reading this, I think going back and digging into the Jack Kirby and Joe Simon Sandman stuff could be fun. I'd want to see what else they're referencing in pop culture and what they're doing with their book. Yeah, it seemed to be a little bit more connected to reality than the other two 40s books. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that story. I thought that was good. I like that. I like the Batman story. That was good.
Yeah, I think maybe not now, but we probably need to read some 70s Batman.
The mystery was good.
The post Adam West Silver Age 70s Batman, with Neal Adams art, and I just haven't read a lot of it ever. I think that would be a fun thing. I think the Sandman stuff would be fun to go back and read. Obviously, any Joe Orlando edited piece, the House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Spectre, and Showcase, any of that stuff could be a lot of fun. I mean, if you go back and read the Superman stuff, you read it because it's the Superman stuff and you know what you're getting. Man, that Wonder Woman stuff.
Oof.
I could see why Wonder Woman wouldn't take off as a character as well as some of the other characters did.
Yeah. It's an interest. It was interesting. If I like if I'm gonna be honest, the early Wonder Woman stuff, it's not my particular cup of tea. The Perez Wonder Woman stuff is definitely it when it comes to Wonder Woman. But that's me.
Well, and like you said, you can watch Marston and his Wonder Woman if you want some more of the backstory on that. To me, with the backstory, makes it worse. Knowing the backstory, I'm like, I think this could have been done a lot better.
Well, once you know the backstory, then you start to look at everything and you start to critique it as to why. Then you're like, oh wow. Then you start.
So maybe knowing the backstory hurts me on those.
Because then you start to feel kind of gross.
Yeah, it felt really gross reading it. Yeah, it
so
did not feel great. It did not feel like Christmas.
As a kid, I'll say when I was a kid reading the old Wonder Woman stuff, I was like, oh, it's Wonder Woman. Okay, cool. Okay. She's fighting bad guys. Okay. And then you become older, you become educated on certain things, and you're like, it takes the wind out of the sails of that, and it makes it gross. And then you read the Perez stuff, and it brings it back to something good again. But,
yeah, and like, we're not throwing shade at anybody that chooses certain lifestyle choices. It's just the way the book was used. My issue is not the lifestyle choices at all.
Yeah, it's not.
Mine is the way that a woman is portrayed in the book. Like the whole line of like, I'm bound here, or I'm powerless. She doesn't say powerless, but basically I'm powerless because I was bound by a man I trusted.
Yeah.
That's the gross part to me. That's gross. That's the gross part to me. It's not like if people want to find each other, I don't give a shit about that. The gross part of the line is the submission of her in the book and the submissive position of women in the story, right?
I think it's
especially in the abuse piece was gross too. Like, I didn't like that at all.
Well, for me, it's like you can, if that's your thing, if that's what you like, that's cool, and do that. But when it comes to, like, I mean, when you're putting it out there for, in art and stuff like that, and I guess in art, that's going to be, in this case, this is like, hey, I'm making this art, and I want it to be digested by children.
Yeah.
And I want kids to read this stuff, and I'm gonna put it out there like this. And what my cup of tea is for this stuff in my life is this, and then I'm gonna put it on the page, and I want it to be done this way because that's what I enjoy. And then it's put out there, and then it's like, oh.
And we weren't reading some of the other books, so maybe there's like references to like the lasso and the mythos. Yeah. Like, so I will, I'm not going to withhold judgment, but I'm going to also say maybe there are things in the other books that explain like how the lasso work and explain the why, like from the Greek mythology mythos pieces and stuff like that. So
perhaps,
but since we're reading a single issue and that's what we got.
It just made for a lot of tying up during the Christmas issue.
It made a lot of time. Well, and I want to go back too. It's the general way women were presented throughout the book, right? Like the mom/wife is powerless. She's always being held over by men.
Situations. Yeah. It's cringy all the way through.
Yep.
So it's a tough read.
Yeah. Not my favorite, but the other ones, they were fine. I mean, the Superman story was boring. I mean, it was there.
What are you talking about? It made you question everything.
No, it really didn't. It was badly written. It was a typical Jerry Siegel story. It was terribly written. It was targeted at kids, so I hope kids got it. But there's no consistency to the story. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It would have been great to be done on the radio.
And we also, if we're critiquing the Wonder Woman story, by the way, there was a lot of bound up women in the Jerry Siegel story, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, both of them were products of their time.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Helpless women.
And, I guess that's why people are still talking about Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Jerry Siegel is known for creating Superman. And outside of the movie, I don't think William Moulton Marston's getting a crap ton of, respect in the comic industry as a great writer.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and the Batman story is great, and yeah, there we go.
I thank you so much for bringing this to us to read today, Dan.
You are so welcome.
I'm so glad that you.
I can feel the genuine.
I liked 70% of it.
Well, this is one of the ones where we pull it out of the long box and we read it, and they can't always be good.
That's right.
And this one, when you get an anthology book, some of it's going to be good and some of it's not. So it's okay.
It's like so you used to say 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I think Meatloaf said that.
Oh, okay. Well, so he used to say it all the time too.
I think Meatloaf said that.
Okay.
Well, we should probably wrap this one up. It is that time of the year. It's the holiday season. We just read a Christmas issue, so this one you should be getting right after Christmas on the 27th. So just sorry we didn't hit you up. We wanted to give you the present of Alpha Dogs right before Christmas, and we'll give you this present right after Christmas. I guess I know Absolute Zeros. You can mention that.
Yeah, Absolute Zeros. Go put your orders in at your bookstores, comic book stores, pre-orders on the internet, through your book purchasing services, through your online bookstores or wherever you get your books. You can go and grab the link that Dan will put up on the page for that, and check it out. Absolute Zeros Camp Launchpad. It's a book that Mike Tanner and I wrote about 3 kids going to summer camp at a space camp. Gabriel Gomez does the art, and Little Brown and Einhorn Epic Productions have put together and are putting out for us.
And give Greg a Christmas present by pre-ordering that book. If you pre-order that book in the hardbound version, you will get a copy of an MXPX CD, and your book will smell like vanilla flavoring. Thank you, Vanilla Cupcake, for bringing that to us. And we really appreciate your patronage there. There we go. See, it's perfect. And I can't wait to see Greg again, because I have a thing for him, which I will just wave across the camera over and over again so he can't see it, and then put it back.
Oh, damn.
And we will reveal, not on this podcast, but on the next podcast. Also, I have some network announcements. It's just one. So what I can tell you, we of course know that in 2024. We announced last week that Nerds from the Crypt will be coming back in 2024.
Yes.
And I can announce this week that it's very likely that you will get, maybe not a ton, but it's very likely you will get episodes of Narrative Gunslingers back in 2024.
Oh my goodness.
And maybe, it's just, this is a maybe. We're still in negotiating with to find Travis Webb here. Yeah. But maybe if Greg is unavailable, I will bravely step in for Greg.
Oh, my.
And I will listen to Travis talk for an hour.
Oh, my goodness. Did you just steal my seat on the podcast?
I've not stolen your seat. This was, we're in negotiations, I believe. If you just happen to be unavailable and I need to say you wanted to release one a month, but you couldn't do it that month, then maybe there are times when I could step in and I can be the grounding of the podcast, apparently.
Yeah, no, because if anybody that listens to our show here, you get me as the color commentary on this show. On Narrative Gunslingers, I am the Dan of the Narrative Gunslingers, where Travis is the me of that show, where he is off the rails.
Well, so good news then. Yeah. I would be in charge of keeping Travis on the rails, which sounds like a daunting task, but maybe we're up to challenge. So good news, friends. We should have a few more podcasts heading back, and so check those feeds. If you've got the feed should not have changed. So if you have the Narrative Gunslingers feed already, and if you have the Nerds from the Crypt feed already, look out for new episodes of those in 2024. And as we get closer to finding out when those are exactly come out, we will update you. But I told you each week, Greg, a little bit of knowledge.
Is this what happens
people
when I
hanging?
Go to Las Vegas with you, and you go and talk to Travis without me?
Yes, these things happen.
Oh my gosh, people!
I can also negotiate and talk. Yeah, it's hard to believe that I can actually talk to people. It's
you sneaky
devastatingly
snake.
Difficult.
He's a snake.
I would call me a snake. I believe I was helping.
I know.
A snake implies I was in the Wonder Woman story, and a helper implies that I was in the Batman story.
Okay. So you went, you go, you hang out with Travis, you take him to a steakhouse, and then all of a sudden you're announcing that you're going to co-host a podcast without me.
I did not say, wait, hold up. I don't think you heard what I said. I believe this was, if Greg is unavailable, Dan may be able to step in. Well, on that note,
yes,
we've given the listeners a little taste of what might come up. Maybe we should just all three do a podcast together, and then I would go insane trying to hold both of you in place. So it could be, but with that said, I think we should wrap up this one. You obviously, hopefully all know about the Retro Emporium on Meeker Street in Kent, Washington. If you want to see Greg and Ann, Greg is there a lot, except tonight because he's podcasting with me. But you are seeing him around December and January, early season. You're very likely to find him there. Yes. In addition, we have to mention our good friend, jiu-jitsu lawyer Paul Boudreau, and his studio. Gym?
Studio.
I'm going to call it a studio.
It's a studio.
Studio gym. I don't know. We'll just call it that.
They wrestle.
Certified Martial Arts on Bridgeport Way and 27th in Tacoma/University Place, Washington. If you are in the area and you want to learn jiu-jitsu, go see Paul. And if you want a will, you can also go see Paul. So,
like me,
you get it done. Let's say you just woke up this morning. You're like, I wish I had a will. And I wish I knew how to choke somebody out.
Yeah.
You could go to Certified Martial Arts.
Why not do both? Yeah. Get a will, learn to choke somebody out.
Well, learn jiu-jitsu and then ask for an appointment with to have your will written. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. He could do both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many other places in the world can you go to get both of those things done?
Not many. I mean, last time I asked for something like that, they're like, "Excuse me, sir, this is a Wendy's."
Yeah, and you were probably in the drive-through too. So
I was.
Wow.
Your Frosty and your 5-piece nugget are gonna be $2.37, sir.
And your will, we don't do here.
We don't do that. And I can choke you out in the back if you want. But
whoa. That is a weird Wendy's. And on that note, I think it's a fine time to end the podcast. So we're out of here on this episode of Funny Book Forensics, as long as we're talking about what goes behind the Wendy's. So we're out. Bye.